Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, a night longer than a decade. The London night rain fell like 1,000 black threads, sewing the sky into a wound that would never heal. Jamie stood under the awning of a small cafe in Notting Hill, his old baseball cap in his hand, his eyes looking far away through the rows of yellow lamps that turned the wet street. He had told himself not to come here, that all memories needed to lie dormant like finished films. But people were only good at playing strong roles when they were in front of a camera. Stepping outside, the truth was an interior scene without a director, without a script, and without a cut. Dakota was 15 minutes late. Every second that passed was a sharp piece of memory. When the door opened, the bell rang, he turned, later than he intended, vaguely hoping it wasn't her who came in, so he could have one last minute to escape. But she was there, her long ash-colored coat, her scent as faint as the sun of a mist morning. Everything in the cafe suddenly fell silent, or maybe it was just Jamie's heart that stopped. "Hi," Dakota said, his voice low but clear, like a note climbing through the rain. "Hi," he replied. They sat in the corner of the old cafe. On the walls were black and white photos of 1960s couples, their smiles like windows letting in the breeze. She ordered mint tea, he ordered espresso. The choices coincided, or the memories had marked them longer than they knew. "How are you?" Dakota asked, the safest question, and also the most dangerous. "Still breathing," Jamie replied, forcing a smile. "And you?" "Still breathing." Between them, an old wooden table. On it, small scratches like the history of a love affair, unrecorded, unmarked, but persistent. When the waiter left, silence fell like a curtain after the first scene. Jamie leaned his hands on the table, intending to say something that would last all night, but then his eyes accidentally caught the silver ring on Dakota's hand. Not too elaborate, not too ostentatious, but enough to make his throat dry. "Are you okay?" he asked again, his second question but his first real question. Dakota looked out the window. On the road, the rain streaks stretched into silver threads. "I'm okay. It's just, there are things that can't be said, okay, and be over." "It's fine, is what you taught me to live on." Jamie smiled faintly. "I've lived by it for years." At this point, a wrinkle moved at the corner of Dakota's mouth. "I didn't teach you, okay. I just hope you don't collapse." "But what about now?" Jamie asked, his eyes never leaving her. "Now we sit here, like two actors forced to act out the goodbye scene again. I wonder, which goodbye will be the last?" Dakota turned to look at him, her eyes deep as skylights. "There is no last time in things that never end, Jamie. There is only time when we are brave enough not to turn back." It all began with days too close, too beautiful, and ended with nights too far, too dark. They had been the silver screen couple in the world's imagination. Two names standing side by side became the syntax of a fever. Long interviews, panning shots, forced smiles to hide fatigue. Amid all the illusions and lights, they found each other in a way only the loneliest people can recognize. A silence that understood, a weariness that needed no explanation. But love in that world was like a line the director had edited in the final rehearsal. More beautiful, more concise, less real. They tried to say less, do more, believing that touching was enough, that everything would find its own way. Until their schedules took them to different cities, impossible time zones, rumors fed on the void. Jamie remembered the night they first argued over a paparazzi photo of Dakota smiling with a coworker, the flash of the camera rubbing salt on a bruised ego. "I thought you understood," she said, her eyes blazing. "I understand," he replied, "but understanding doesn't always mean winning." Then there was silence. Then there were text messages sent and deleted. Then there were missed calls. The afters stretched on like a road without a turn. There were things they didn't say, the fear of being left behind, the fear of being misunderstood, the greatest fear of one day appearing in the headlines without the others. And like all self-fulfilling prophecies, it happened when they were at their weakest. "Jamie," Dakota said softly, pulling him from his reverie. "I didn't come here to rehash things. I just felt the need to look straight. Me neither. He smiled wearily. I don't blame you. I don't blame what's gone. I just don't know what to name what's happening. Dakota touched the rim of her teacup. What's the point of naming it? Things that need to go will go. Things that need to stay, sometimes do. If that's the case, Jamie leaned in, why is there still this corner of the shop, on a rainy day like the old days, and you wearing the ash-colored shirt that used to make me feel safe? Her smile was short and sad, because sometimes people need a familiar setting to say unfamiliar words. What words? Goodbye. The word fell, slow, heavy, and divided the room. Jamie felt as if he had prepared for the end, but the truth is, people can only rehearse breakups in their minds. When the line is spoken, all the props fall apart. Okay, he said finally, his voice hoarse. If that's what you want. Not what you want, Dakota replied, but what I know I have to do. For who? For you, for me, for us in the years gone by, the beautiful but tiring years. Outside, the rain eased. People passed by, no one knowing that in this corner of the bar a love story was being folded, each fold as carefully as a letter to keep it from creasing. Jamie thought of the roads he had traveled, the roles he had played, the nights standing in unfamiliar hotel rooms, watching the night through equally unfamiliar windows. No role was as tiring as the role of a man trying not to show he was about to cry. Are you scared? Dakota asked, his voice like a wind through a closed door. I am scared, he said honestly. I've been afraid for a long time. Afraid that without you, everything else would lose meaning. Then I tried to believe the opposite. That without you, everything else would be difficult. And I was stuck between two fears. Me too, Dakota said. I thought love meant protecting each other from the world. But it turns out that sometimes love is just protecting each other from ourselves. Another silence. The restaurant was getting more crowded. A middle-aged couple sitting at the next table chuckled at their own story. Jamie watched them, wishing that someday he and Dakota would grow old like that, calmly talking about trivial things, without having to hide from anyone, without having to explain anything to the world or to himself. But some wishes come late, or come at the right time but not to the right person at the right time. Can I do something selfish? Jamie said. Just say it. Let me say that I loved you enough not to keep you. Dakota's eyes wavered, like a lake when a bird has just passed by. Thank you, she whispered. I love you too much to keep you waiting for something that won't come. They left the bar when the rain had stopped, the pavement gleaming like a large mirror. They walked side by side down the quiet street, occasionally a taxi passing by, carrying the smell of leather seats and cheap perfume. No touching, no trying to avoid each other, a distance maintained like a ritual. I'm flying tonight, Dakota said, looking somewhere in the dark sky. A new project. I know, Jamie nodded. I'll go too. Ireland first, then again. Are you still writing? A little. Fragments. About what? About people learning to say goodbye without hating each other. Dakota smiled. I look forward to reading it. Maybe you'll never publish it. Why? Because there are stories that should only be known between two people, and a city in the rain. They stopped at the intersection. The red light reflected in Dakota's eyes, turning into a small flame. Jamie, she said, promise me something. What? Don't use me to hurt yourself anymore. Don't use what's past to measure what's yet to come. He was silent, so long that the sound of traffic became a soundtrack. Then he nodded. I promise. Thank you. And you? Do you promise me anything? Dakota thought. I promise not to run away from what I really want, even if that means leaving. Okay. The wind blew, cool, pure like a hand that had just washed away sadness. Dakota stepped forward, giving him a brief hug. Not passionate, not uncertain, a hug of two adults, exchanging kindness as a keepsake. Jamie rested his chin on her shoulder, feeling the scent of her hair pull him back to lost seasons. He let go first, knowing that if he waited any longer, the promise he had made would fade. "I wish you peace," he said softly. "I wish you courage," she replied. They parted ways. Dakota went east, Jamie west, like two rivers choosing their own basins after a brief confluence. Neither of them turned back. At least, not tonight. In the days that followed, London healed like a body accustomed to a cut. The cafes were still open, the morning mist still drifted in strips from the roofs, the doors still creaked whenever someone left for work early. Jamie returned to his routine, jogging along the canal, stopping in at a bakery for a croissant, reading a few pages of a book unrelated to his profession. He imagined his heart as a newly cleaned room. The dust had been swept, the windows were wide open, no extraneous objects remained, and nothing new had been brought in. In the evening, he sat at his computer. The cursor blinked like an urgent gaze. Finally, he wrote, "There are loves that take us to the end of ourselves, not to stay, but to show us the way back. They are not wrong. They have just done their job." He did not send those words to anyone. Not because no one deserves to read them, but because there are stories that, if spoken aloud, will lose their color. In another city, Dakota woke up in a strange hotel room, the morning light spilling diagonally across the thick curtains. She sat up, opened her phone, and saw that the name of the person no longer appeared on the speed dial suggestion. She turned off the screen, leaned back against the wall, and listened to her heartbeat surprisingly calmly. They say breakups are storms. But sometimes, breakups are just the change of seasons. She walked down the street, bought a cup of black coffee. On the table, she opened her notebook, and wrote, "I loved someone like I loved a song. I knew it would end, but I listened to the last note. And when the note died, I was grateful I had the whole song." She smiled, not a triumphant smile, nor a sad smile. Just the smile of someone who had finally understood a simple thing. Love doesn't always last. Sometimes, it leads us to a place where we no longer need it to stand on our own. Months passed. The gossip faded. New names filled the papers. No one pursued the old questions. But on very special days, at seemingly random moments, memories still found a way to touch them. Not to call back, but to say a polite hello. One afternoon, Jamie received a thin envelope with no sender's name. Inside was a black and white postcard of a rainy street corner, very similar to the one they had sat on. On the back, there was only a handwritten sentence. "If we ever meet again, I hope it will be because we want to tell each other about how things have become better." No signature, but he didn't care. He put the postcard in a drawer, along with a few old photos and a faded movie ticket. That drawer, he rarely opened. Not out of fear, but out of respect. One night, in the small kitchen, Jamie cooked a late dinner. The smell of fried garlic wafted warmly. He suddenly realized that since saying goodbye, he had taken better care of himself, eating well, sleeping regularly, calling his mother often. There were gaps that should only be filled with gentle things. He poured a glass of wine, leaned against the windowsill, and watched his shadow lengthen. He imagined Dakota standing somewhere, with a cup of coffee or nothing at all, also at peace in her own way. Jamie raised his glass, whispered, "For all that was beautiful," and drank it all. Time skip, 2 years later. One evening, a film festival in Europe. The hall was brightly lit, people were talking, laughter was laughing, glasses were clinking. Jamie stood on the balcony, trying to find a breathing space amid the sea of polite compliments. Suddenly, he heard the sound of high heels stopping behind him. He didn't turn around right away. There were intuitions you learned after seasons of loss. "Congratulations," a voice said. Not high, not low. Just right. He turned around. Dakota stood there, her simple black dress, her hair pulled back, her eyes still like two skylights. They looked at each other, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Then both burst into laughter, as light as a breeze passing through the railing. "Thanks," Jamie said. "Your movie was great." "Thanks," she replied. "Your movie was too." They didn't ask each other how the past 2 years had been. They didn't need to. All the answers were already there in the way they stood straighter, smiled more easily, and were quieter. They said a few words about work, about a mutual director, about this city that still rained suddenly. When the MC called Dakota inside, she stopped, looked at him, her smile brightening a little. "We did the right thing, right?" Jamie nodded. "Yes, we did the right thing." "Well, see you again, in another story, not necessarily about love." "I hope so." Dakota walked away. The light swallowed her, but gently. Jamie stood for a moment, feeling like he had just put down a book and read the last page. He didn't bother putting it back on the shelf. He left it on the table, within reach, not to read it again, but to occasionally stroke the cover, to remember that he had been on a long journey and had arrived at his destination. Out on the balcony, the night softened. A thin drizzle drifted by, enough to cool, not enough to wet. Jamie took a deep breath, turned into the lobby, and joined the crowd. As he walked, he realized his heart was singing softly, not the old love song, but a new, unfamiliar, but very warm melody. And somewhere, perhaps in another city, Dakota was hearing the same melody, no longer the rhythm of two people entwined against the world, but the rhythm of two separate individuals, whole, grateful, and gently moving on. They had loved each other. They had been broken, and they learned how to break without breaking. The rest belongs to the future, where paths do not necessarily meet, but can still be seen from afar, under a clear sky.